It's my pleasure to introduce our next guest. As I mentioned earlier, we have Iowa's 2 U.S. senators that are with us today. And we talked a little bit earlier about Senator Grassley being the only working farmer in the U.S. Senate. Well, we also happen to have a new U.S. senator elected 2 years ago who continues to live in rural Iowa, grew up in rural Iowa, and comes back to Iowa often. And as Senator Grassley, Senator Ernst is on the Senate Ag Committee. So please join me in welcoming our U.S. Senator, as we all know, Joni Ernst. Joni?
Thank you. Please be seated. What a great group today. Oh, I have to put my cheaters on. So good morning. And yes, Senator Grassley is the only actively farming farmer in the United States Senate. We're very, very proud of him. And Iowa also has the distinction of being the only state that has both of its senators serving on the Ag Committee, so we are really excited about that. Well, good morning, everybody. I hope it has been a good conference for you so far, and I hope you're taking away a lot of really great information. And I am always so pleased to be able to join Bruce and this wonderful organization. And certainly, we are very, very fortunate to have our Secretary of Agriculture, Sonny Perdue, joining us as well today. His strong leadership at the USDA is welcomed as we battle the downturn in commodity prices and we work to turn things around in our ag economy. I want to thank everyone for being here because, as you know, we are about to embark on the 2018 Farm Bill, and I need to hear your concerns and your stories firsthand. Those of you that have visited with me in Washington, D.C. know that when you ask, is there anything that we can do for you, Joni? I always say, tell me your stories. And we've recently had a number of groups passing through out in Washington, D.C., our soybean farmers, our corn growers, and so forth. And they have shared some really important stories that I can share with other members of the Senate Ag Committee, as well as those that are far removed from farming, and it helps them understand some of the challenges that we have in rural America. I really want to know what you think that we are doing well, and also what you think maybe we can do better. I tell everyone I meet that it is so important that you be open with me about your challenges and those victories, so I can take it back and share those things with my colleagues. They are essential, your stories. They are essential as we look to create a farm bill that works for farmers and ranchers all across this great state and the United States. So as I travel across Iowa, I am hearing from folks that our producers need to be able to count on the stability provided in the Farm Bill programs, especially during a time where not only farms, but all of rural communities are in need. I want to assure you that one of my top priorities will be protecting crop insurance. And every group that I speak to brings this to my attention, and I'm glad they do so. I will also be working to ensure that dollars are being spent as intended in our Farm Bill programs. For example, one of the most common concerns that I hear from farmers around the state is that whole farms are being idled through CRP. In addition to being in inefficient use of taxpayer resources, putting productive farmland out of production for extended periods is harmful to our young and beginning farmers and those surrounding communities. And as we looked into this situation, we noticed some interesting facts. Many of the counties in Iowa with the highest poverty rates are also the counties with the most land enrolled in CRP. Decatur County, down my way, for instance, has a 22% poverty rate and has 26.6% of its cropland enrolled in CRP. And that's not the only example, there are many others. So instead, we should focus on targeting conservation dollars at marginal acres, empowering farmers to engage in voluntary conservation practices without putting aside that really productive farmland. I also hear time and time again that we need to take another look at young and beginning farmers programs. We need to make sure that they actually are helping our young farmers to be competitive in the markets. In addition to ensuring that farmers have a strong safety net, it is important that we continue to find opportunities for our producers and the bounty that we have, not just here in Iowa, but all across the Midwest, finding ways we can get those bounties overseas. Agricultural exports are one of the few areas where we enjoy a trade surplus with other nations, and that's a rarely mentioned bright spot that exists out there. Ag exports are especially important in Iowa, as 1 in 5 jobs here in Iowa depends upon our exports. We're dependent on trade. As the administration prepares to renegotiate NAFTA, it is critical that we recognize how important this agreement is for agriculture. Canada and Mexico are 2 of our most important export markets for agriculture. Mexico is one of our top markets for corn, as well as for pork and for beef. In addition to maintaining the access we have in our current trade deals, we must also work to negotiate new bilateral trade agreements with nations like Japan. This is especially important now that we are no longer engaged in the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Trade is not only important to our agricultural producers, but also for our national security interests. I firmly believe that good trade partners make good friends. And many of you that have visited with me about these bilateral agreements, about the Trans-Pacific Partnership, you've heard me speak to the issue of national security. If we're not engaging in trade with a number of those nations, especially in the Pacific region, there are other countries, or at least one other country, that will fill the gap, and that country is China. If we don't pursue these trade agreements, I guarantee you that China will. And what I have heard from those Pacific nations is that there's enough Chinese influence there already, and they would much rather have us as a trade partner. It is also important that we find ways to build on the progress that we've made in opening up China to U.S. beef and find ways to expand access to China for other agricultural products such as poultry. Fortunately, we do have a familiar face representing us in Beijing who is just the man for the job. And I know that others have spoken about the recent trade trip to China, and that Ambassador Governor Branstad, many of us use that term, is doing quite a good job for us, not just Iowans, but all of us engaged in agriculture. In addition to our agricultural exports, and as many of you all know, Iowa is also a leader in renewable energy production. In addition to serving on the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee, which oversees the EPA, I am fortunate to be serving once again as the chairman of the Rural Development and Energy Subcommittee within the Senate Ag Committee. Last Congress, I held a hearing on the importance of renewable fuels to Iowa and the Midwest, and the ripple effect the renewable fuel standard has on rural economies. And just this week, I testified at the EPA's public hearing on the importance of a strong RFS. The RFS is critical to supporting our agricultural economy while also reducing our dependence on foreign oil and providing consumers with choices at the pump. While I was pleased that the EPA set the proposed volume requirements for conventional ethanol for 2018 at the congressionally directed levels, I am disappointed that the advanced biofuel numbers were lowered. Additionally, I'm concerned that the biodiesel numbers for 2019 are being held constant and would like to see it increase to more accurately reflect our current domestic production and capacity use and usage. It is important that we continue to foster growth in this vital industry. And that's why I'm opposed to shifting the RFS point of obligation, which would create uncertainty and add a great deal of regulatory costs and complications. I also support improving consumer access to biofuels by fixing the RVP waiver to allow higher ethanol blends to be sold year-round, not just in the fall and winter. Speaking of regulations, which is a hot topic with me, one of the things I hear most from farmers and those in the agriculture industry is the challenge of dealing with unnecessary and overly burdensome rules and regulations. Whether it's the EPA's Waters of the U.S. rule or the recent attempts to effectively ban the use of the herbicide atrazine, the last administration made it more challenging and expensive for our farmers and ranchers to produce safe and affordable food. I'm thrilled that Washington is finally standing up for our rural communities and holding our government accountable as we move forward to finding the right way to eliminate those burdensome and overreaching rules. Additionally, I'm thrilled to see Secretary Perdue already engaging with other federal agencies to identify unnecessary and onerous regulations that have been hampering our farmers and our ranchers. Rolling these back will help reduce some of the burdens our producers and rural communities are feeling so acutely. For too long, Washington bureaucrats have really taken that one-size-fits-all approach to farming and ranching, and that has led to many challenges in our industries and frustrations. Specifically, the FDA's rulemaking within the Food Safety Modernization Act, which treats animal feed production facilities as if they are the same as human food production facilities. You can see where the difficulties would be. I'm encouraged by the early steps of this new administration to press the pause button on some of these rules and regulations and revisit them one by one to determine which one of them really follows common sense and which ones don't. In closing, I do want to thank you all again for being here today and engaging on these important topics to all of us, whether it's farming and ranching, rural development within our communities. And I really do look forward to hearing from you in the months to come. And as we lead up to the next Farm Bill, it is important that you share your stories with me, because that is the way that we can effectively communicate to others. Like I said, whether it's on the Senate Agricultural Committee or whether it's just those that may not be engaged in farming and ranching in their own home states. So I appreciate your time today. I look forward to finding out ways that we can better serve you at the federal government. I do believe it is an honor to serve all of you. And Bruce, I want to thank you so much for allowing me to be here today and spend this time with so many great folks. So thank you again. God bless you all for doing what you do. Thank you for feeding and fueling the world. Thanks so much. Thank you.